आप सर अपना एक्सपीरियंसेस शेयर कर रहे थे और हम सब सर बड़ी फिल्मों में काम किया है और सर आपने सब अपने एक्सपीरियंस शेयर करे। सर आर यू एबल टू हियर मी सर?
Yes.
Huh. Sir, but I really felt that for the last 1 hour, sir, what you talked about, sir, was really lot of sir trivia to me. I didn't really felt that, sir, that I did really gain something, sir, that out of the blue that I didn't know about, sir, because as a filmmaker, sir, when I will be coming out of craft, sir, I am doing the regular course, sir, for 1 year. I will not be having, sir, these many resources. I will be doing I don't know, sir, that if my film will have a sound designer, either from craft or somebody, sir. Chances are that I will be doing everything on my own. And sir, for the last 1 hour, sir, that you talked about this film for, sir, which you might have had, sir, lakhs of rupees and many more assistants, sir, besides you. So, sir, and also, sir, Naresh Sharma, sir, talked about with you, sir, about these big budgeted films, sir. But, sir, but instead, sir, I have some gathered some questions, sir, which I'd really like to ask you, sir. There are some couple of questions, sir, that I have written down. Um, can I start, sir?
Please.
Yes, sir. Um, Sir, first of all, sir, for these next 2 days, sir, I really like to establish something, sir, that we can connect you with. Sir, there are also one or two sound designers from मतलब हमारे साथ सर जस्ट डायरेक्शन बैच के हैं, लेकिन सर और भी साउंड डिजाइनिंग बैच के हैं सर स्टूडेंट्स। तो फिर सर मैंने सर आपका आईएमडीबी प्रोफाइल चेक किया सर, बेलोन फॉन्सी सर, और मतलब मुझे नहीं पता सर आपके 164 क्रेडिट्स हैं सर, और सर मतलब
Let's
बहुत
get to
सारी
the
में फिल्में।
let's
हाँ।
get to the question, no?
हाँ सर, तो फिर सर फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल सर देर इज दैट यू डिड वन फिल्म सर गोदावरी, and sir, me and my friend are sir really awaiting for that film, sir. But it hasn't released sir, in theaters or in OTT platforms, sir. But we checked out for sir all we could gather about that film was sir from seeing that film trailer, sir, for Godavari. Um, so can you sir really sir talk about that, because it's a one art house or independent film, sir, Marathi film.
If I ask me a specific question, because after another hour I'll feel that it will be trivia only for you. So you'll
No,
have to be specific with your questions now.
okay, okay, sir. Sir, if we have to talk about sir, these sir, really I want to talk about then sir, if we trivia sir, then independent or hot house film, sir. So when I checked out the trailer, sir, uh, for the film Godavari, sir,
Hmm.
what was your process, sir? I just wanted to really know your process, sir. So I just wanted to know, sir, the kind of softwares or sir equipments you use, sir, for those independent art house films, sir. Sir, the equipments do you use, sir? Are those your own, or for every film, sir, do you rent out them from a particular company?
Okay, Rohit. Let's be Since you're being very blunt with me, I'm going to be extremely blunt with you.
No, sir, I'm not really being
Hold
blunt,
on,
sir,
hold on,
but
hold on, hold on,
okay, sir.
hold on. At the very beginning of my conversation, I started with laying out the different kinds of projects that exist in our business.
Yes, sir.
And the very first two projects I mentioned, or the genre of projects I mentioned, were short films and documentaries. These projects normally don't have any money. The third type of project I talked about was an independent film, because I refuse to call them art house anymore. Art house is a
Independent film, yes, sir.
1980s word that was used at a time when we didn't have any other better word to use. Yeah. Every filmmaker who's making a film is not making a film because he is going to get a audience that's a budget that's 100 crores or 1000 theaters to play his project on. Nor is he going to be able to get a Netflix, Amazon, Hotstar to come on board to mount his project. It's difficult. So when you're addressing something like that, you don't look at the bigger films and talk about having hundreds of, thousands of rupees or many assistants. It's a complete wrong view, especially for me and someone like me who approaches even the smallest of short films that has no money with the same parameters and yardsticks as a film that's got hundreds of crores. Yeah. For that, when you're being very critical about somebody who's on the other end of the camera, you needed to have gone through all those 164 films on IMDb to figure out how many films in the last 15 years that person has done where there was no money at all. And for that, I personally, I mean, of course, you are a student, and so you're not supposed to know. But being a student is also a responsibility on all of you attending to have done your homework and research, because you don't have deliveries of projects to be done on a daily basis like people like me. So you have time on your hands, and Godavari is not the only film I have done in the last 10 years that has had no money. Films like Godavari, June, Knock Knock Knock, Water Baby, Nobleman, Kude, and I can keep rattling. These are just films from the last 3 years. Manja, I Rooting for Runa are films that have had zero money for me. So it isn't about what equipment I own, what softwares I use, but about my commitment to the work to deliver. I mean, films like Water Baby, Knock 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 went on to win those filmmakers the national award. Uh, Films like Godavari have gone on to win my director, the lead actor, the IFFI awards.
Yes, sir.
Films like June have gone on to win the director, actors, multiple festival awards.
So
Is
can we
that,
talk about those films, sir?
yeah, so my worry is now if I talk about something, you will have to be specific with the technical question, because anything that I say from here on would be trivia for someone like you.
um, sir, for big budgeted films, sir, not for independent films, sir.
How does it become trivia when it's a big budget film and not
सर
trivia when it's a
लाइक
small
सर
film?
सर आपने जैसे जब दिल धड़कने दो का सर आपने एग्जांपल लिया सर जब टेबल वाला सीक्वेंस था सर ठीक है
Do you know what
सर
my crew strength was on that film?
आई डोंट नो सर देयर मस्ट बी सर मोर देन वन इंडिविजुअल आई कैन से दैट फॉर श्योर सर
You,
बिसाइड्स यू सर
how many people do you expect to have in a film crew for a shoot?
सर ऑन अ फिल्म क्रू सर बिहाइंड द कैमरा देयर मस्ट बी मोर देन 20 सर
No, no, for sound. We're talking only sound.
फॉर साउंड सर 5 सर 10 15 6
You're a three-member crew, including myself. It's one of the toughest films that breaks your back trying to shoot.
सर आई डिडंट नो
Yeah.
सर आई
No
रियली डिडंट
problem.
नो
So
सर
now we'll talk specific because I don't want to talk trivia.
यस
I
सर
am offended by your statement.
um uh
Totally. But I understand, like I said, you're a student, and so you're sitting wherever you are
hmm,
with the lack of information. And so I would like now for us to be specific.
yes sir
You know, that film is impossible to shoot with a three-member crew. It's impossible.
Okay,
That
sir.
particular film. Why? Because a crew of three members, including myself, are servicing scenes that have more than 16 actors to mic at some given points in time. And we are miking them on a floating hotel that's 1.6 miles wide
Hmm.
and 13 stories high. The number of times we were abused for not being at the door of the actor on time to mic an actor is so many that anybody would have quit that job and left. And this is with no disregard or disrespect to my actors. We just know how impossible that task was to have a five-member crew on that film, and that film justified that kind of. But to come to your question about Godavari or to June or to any other smaller film that was done, it was done exactly the same way. People who came on board, and again, what you're wrong about is uh, A film like Dil Rakhne Do is a three-member post team. Okay, it's not 10, 12, 15 people working on the film. There's me, one dialogue editor, there's me, there's one effects editor, and then there's the Foley team. And in the mix, it's the mix engineer, the associate mix engineer, and myself. Very
Hmm.
small teams, yeah. So one of the biggest mistakes most of you make is you assume when a film comes mounted with 50, 60, 100 crores, we are given luxurious treatment.
Mhm.
It's exactly the opposite. Films like Godavari I have done for zero money. It's the only way the film can ever get done. I've spent 20 days on that set shooting with the unit, recording ambiences for, sorry, not 20, 15 days, recording ambiences for 13 of those 15 days at my cost. Yeah. Uh, the post team has one dialogue editor, one effects editor, and myself. My mix team, of course, we were lucky to have the two really good mix engineers who came on board at different points in time to work with me on the mix. Our total budget for sound on that film was lesser than 6 lakhs.
Um,
But
sir,
once the film, of course, once it is out in a theater, it sounds exactly the same like it would have sounded if it was a Dil De Rakhne Do, any other film that was 100 crores.
hmm. Sir, um, so okay, sir. Now that you have,
Rohit, I would come in
sir,
between. Let me just say one thing only. This class is meant for everyone. So you just write down your question and read it loud like a news reader so that baylon would know exactly what you wanted to ask and other people would also get benefited from his answer. But you
So
have to read your question. First of all, you have to write down your question and read it out so that it will not be beating around the bush.
anyway, I got one part of your question is what's the equipment I use, whether I owned it or not. I think
um,
that is immaterial. If I own the equipment, then the producers got the benefit of everything that was in the arsenal. Again, like I said an hour back, uh, when I get onto a project, I am not cutting down. It's not like, acha, if you pay 1 lakh, you get 1 lakh worth of resources, but if you pay 100, you get 100 rupees worth of resources. The moment a filmmaker of that nature comes on board to work with me, and if in principle I am signed on to that project, money is no longer the derivative for me saying, no, no, you will not get this because you don't have the budget. They get the 7-star treatment that a 100 crore film would get. So I don't think it matters what software I use. Everybody is working on Pro Tools. It doesn't matter what recorders I use. Uh, we have what we have, and in this particular film case of Godavari, the production mixer who came on board along with his two-member team and the equipment was at their cost. It wasn't at my cost. I'm ashamed to even say that they, I think, did the entire location sound for lesser than 14,000 rupees a day. But they were very committed to wanting to do the project and they delivered under very difficult situations. One of the most brilliantly recorded soundtracks for dialogue. So,
sir, checking, sir, your earliest work, sir, from the earliest work, sir, it says from 1994 on, sir. The film that I was first able to recognize, sir, that you is credited use to you, sir, is Satya, where it's a DTS mix engineer, sir.
hmm, yeah.
What is the question?
So first of all, sir, I really wanted to know, so what does a DTS mix engineer mean, sir? And sir, at that time, sir, uh, were you involved, sir, does that mean, sir, were you involved in recording the sound, sir, or at location mix, or were you after the post, sir? What is the DTS mix engineer, sir?
Rohit, I don't think your questions are. I want to stay technical with you, and these are not technical questions. Now, what's happening is this has become like an interview of me talking about trivia.
Um,
That So let's break down the film process into the stages that they are. Yeah.
Sir, but first of all, sir, sir, uh,
Let's break down the film into the stages that they are, Rohit. So you understand whether when someone says they are a DTS mix engineer, you understand whether it is in the pre-production stage, production stage, or the post-production stage. Would that make sense? Because we'll stay tech now. Yeah.
hmm.
So you're a sound student or you're a direction
Sir,
student?
direction student, sir, direction screenplay.
Uh, can you, in
This is
your words,
Vedant. Vedant, you are the sound recording guy, right? Vedant, are you hearing me?
No, sir, I am from direction.
Direction screenplay, sir, the Vedant.
Direction is
Okay,
complete.
because you was very often not present here, so I was little mistaken. Aryan, you are from sound for sure. Aryan, are you here? Aryan, you have gone for a walk or you are still here?
No, sir, I'm still here.
Okay, so you need to speak so that we know that you are here. So you are from
Yes,
sound
sir.
recording, right?
Yes,
In
sir.
this list, you are the sound recording guy. Then there is a Pratham. Pratham, you are from sound, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there are two students who are from sound recording.
lovely. So I see Aniket's already posted exactly the question I'm going to address. When do you usually get hired, during pre-production or post-production? And directors give you a script to read,
And I think
get
this
an
should be the
idea.
way. If somebody has a question, just post here a question so that you know what you are asking, right? And baylon will take from time to time whatever the relevant questions are. So post your question. That would be better for you also because you know what you're asking, and he would be also being precise about his answer.
So, Rohit, if it helps you, usually uh, the ideal situation is somebody who's got a script and would like to work with a sound designer, approaches the sound designer with a script. This is during what we call the pre-production stage. The production stage, and just so we are all clear, is when you start rolling camera on set with all of your crew and your actors on set. Yeah. So in the pre-production stage, you are probably ideating over, based on how much you want the sound designer to be involved with the script process. He comes back to you with feedbacks once he's read the script. It could be feedbacks just on the basic story, flaws in the story, or none of the above. But he would also come back to you with discussions, your expectations based on what you want from him as a sound designer, uh, what he can contribute to the project. These are conversations. There are no rules over here. There is no uh, when you walk through pre-production, you're not walking through it with an idea of what you're going to be able to achieve at the end. You just all get on the same page. That's the whole thing. If there's something specific you need to ask me, then please feel free to ask. But a pre-production process is just kind of an expression of interest that the director and the sound designer want to work together with each other. The sound designer, I mean, usually I never say no to a script because I don't like the script. It's not at all a given. So actors say no to script, they don't like what they're reading. The pre-production stage involves technical recce's where you're heading off onto set. You are seeking the sound designer's inputs, as in the location recordist inputs, on whether the location is good for shoot or not. Is it too noisy? Sometimes it might be too noisy, but you need to shoot over there because the location itself visually is good. So there are these various discussions that are happening through the pre-production. You are discussing with the camera and lighting department if there are potential issues with camera placement, multiple cameras, how they want to shoot, uh, noise potentials that come from lights, noise potential that comes from generators parked too close to the set. uh, your scene is being broken down, so you're discussing with the direction team, which is your first AD and so on. You know, how you intend to pull off a scene on a difficult day. Let's say it's a car sequence and all actors are going to be in a car. How do you want to approach it? You're looking at safety and security, not just of your crew, but also of the functioning of the people involved with that particular shot. Uh, you're planning for production. That's all that's happening in pre-production. The pre-planning that you do for when you get into production. Uh, like I said, production is when camera starts rolling with your actors and crew all on set. Every day is a day that's scheduled based on shoot for the day, number of pages, the scenes. Ideally, you read scenes, you pre-discuss scenes one day before. If you have any issues, points, notes, you discuss them a day before. Uh, my assumption is, and best practice is, when you get on set to shoot for that day, you focus on what you're shooting for the day. So no day ever goes by without it presenting some problem or the other. So you're constantly not just focused on the creatives for achieving the dialogue for the day, but also focused on solution finding for problems pertaining to your department so that the day can be met. Because the production cycle for a day is, if you're shooting 3 pages, you want to achieve those 3 pages in that given day. Once the project is completely shot, it goes into what we call the post-production process, first starting with the editing of the project. Once everybody, the edit can take between 1 month to 3 months, 4 months. A film is usually locked once the director and producers are all in agreement that they are happy with the cut. Once they are happy with the cut, they would export and edit to the post teams that are waiting in the wings. So that is the sound department, the VFX department, the DI department. The sound's broken up into multiple different other departments. You have the dialogue, effects, the Foley, the background. So each of these teams are all working on the sound for the film for their respective departments. Uh, Once all of that is done, it forward goes to the mixing team. So the mix team is where the entire film mix starts. Film mixes could be either Dolby Atmos, 7.1, 5.1 stereo, or all of the four, all depending on what are the deliverable guidelines for the release of the film. A film release could be theatrical or it could be OTT. So once you understand this entire, I mean, I've synoptically, these are usually like full day classes that are held in terms of the details of what each department does, right from pre-production and details under pre-production or production or post. But synoptically, this is the holistic view of what the entire film process would look like technically. Okay, so there's another question from Aniket. For June, were you already there with a team, or you started working in post-production? Like, its soundtrack was composed afterwards. Also, there are many outdoor scenes in the movie exploring Aurangabad. So how did you manage that? Okay, so Aniket, I think the same process followed true for June. That particular film, as it started its pre-production process, the script, while it was being written, the technical recce's had already started. I remember reading through the script. To be more precise, while I'm reading to a script and I am doing a tech rec, one of the things I want from the direction team is a location breakdown for the script, which means if I'm shooting in a X location, what all are the scenes that are being covered for that particular location. That particular location for June is a colony, so we shot in different parts of the colony. So then, let's say the house, the scenes being shot in the house, the proximity of the house to the main road. And Aurangabad is a noisy city. So one of the things that bothered me was Neil's house overlooking right the main road. So that was a point of concern. So we start discussing points of concern as we walk right inside the interior of the colony. For example, it looks like you've seen the film. So the opening scene between Nikki and the secretary of the society, uh, it's right inside, and it's quieter. So those scenes didn't bother me. But Neil's home, especially the place where they wanted to have it staged, was very close, overlooking the main road. So you start to think of technical workarounds, the potential noise problems that might exist for those particular scenes. Similarly, the towards the end, when father and son are talking on the terrace, one of the concerns was not only that, again, I knew the city was a little more noisier, but it was also being shot around Diwali. And so there would be crackers, fireworks going on. Now we can't stop the traffic, neither can we stop people from lighting crackers if they had to. So you kind of just, orange flag these kind of scenes, and you have to take care of what best you can do when you get to the post production of the sequences. uh, I did the entire technical recce. I mean, for most of Nikhil's films I have tech recce'd all of his films, because that's where the entire plan comes together in principle. And while somebody else might be shooting that project, there's a daily dialogue, if not alternatively alternate days, on what I want to be done for that particular film, whether it be ambience recording or whether it be, wild tracks for a particular scene. These things I think all start when we are tech wrecking, because I would then create a breakdown sheet for my recordist. We would go through the entire location breakdowns per scene, discuss the scenes, discuss the problems, and take it from there. Uh, One scene, for example, that was extremely problematic right from the very beginning, tech recce time itself, is the Teen Darwaza scene, where Neil and Nikki have finished riding the bike. They stop to discuss, and they are discussing Muslims, and right at that point, yeah, that's a very noisy junction. It's not even a junction. It's kind of this darwaza. You know how you have the India Gate, for example, and traffic's going around it. Yeah, and it's in the middle of that traffic. It's so dense, the traffic, that to even cross the road is very difficult at times, because there is no signal to moderate the traffic over there. And during the shoot time, I felt, sorry, during the pre-production time on this technical recce, I felt this scene would have to be dubbed. Now, what happens is, as we get into the post-production process and you're looking at the performance of the actors on your screen, you also have to be aware that there's a certain performance that is difficult to replicate in the dub, in the post. And so we went through the dialogue edit of that scene, and once we were done, it dialogue editor sent it across to me, and I discussed this with my directors. There are two directors of that film, and I said, look, it's noisy. I know it's a difficult scene to dub. Give me some time. Let me see if I can shape the scene a little more better. And uh, what worked for the scene is that the dynamics, the dialogue projection in the scene is very good. It's noisy when the vehicles are passing by, so you start to then edit, you finer edit the scenes, you drop down the dialogue noise between the dialogues. So when dialogue and there is no dialogue, so between that you start to pull down the noise, and you shape the dialogue to be a little more dynamically clearer, and you in effect start to create the world around it so that it seems like it merges with the real world. So that scene, I think we ended up dubbing just 3 lines in that scene eventually, once we were done with it. And that is a beautiful scene. I'm happy that it made its way to the final post without having to dub the whole scene. Uh, the other similar scene, again in a nice quiet location but very tricky scene, is when Neil breaks down and starts crying. He's telling the story of Moreshwar and Moreshwar committing suicide. I knew to get the actor to redo those bits when he's crying would be very difficult. So of course you clean again. The whole approach for cleanup is not to over clean up, it is just to do only that much without disturbing the tonality of the sequence. Now once you're done with that whole assembly of the dialogue, you realize in between you're still missing some cries, especially as we come to the end of him crying and Nikki starts to tell her story, so you must remember you can go back to the other takes that exist, because your assembly of an edit is but a combination of only the final takes that make it to the edit. You're left with a lot of other what we call the outtakes, right? The balance of your rushes, and you can start to find bits of crying that work for the gaps, and you fill up the gaps. And that's exactly what we did there. We filled up the gaps with crying that also worked. It has to work organically, it shouldn't feel wrong for that moment. uh, and again, I'm happy that that scene, for example, very tricky scene, didn't have to be dubbed. We picked up additional lines with Neil as he is narrating the story in the beginning, because it had to fill in the gaps which are missing in the original production sound. And again, only the gaps have been picked up. So when you're picking up gaps, you have to be careful to make sure that the location sound and the dubs also match. It shouldn't jump. The dialogue shouldn't jump out as location and dub. Yeah.
Yes, it was perfect. So like I never felt like it was dubbed. I
Yeah,
thought
that's
it was
a
totally six.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just bringing merit to Rohit's question from earlier, these are films that actually have zero money. Literally, a lot of the people working on the team are also working because they are committed to my commitment. Because
Hmm.
it's like the captain of the ship, he's decided to take this sinking boat and resurrect it. Just to say it loosely, not that the film was bad, but sound, when that film started off, it started off literally as an independent, very small indie film. And I think the happiness at the end of the project, especially with both my directors, Surud and Vaibhav, is that
Vaibhav. Hmm.
yeah, they both said ki now the film suddenly feels like a huge big film, because the sound just radically changed the way the film was originally scripted to be. So and noisy place, very noisy. I don't even when we shot at Bibi Ka Maqbara, which is a historical landmark
Hmm.
spot in
Hmm.
Aurangabad, uh, they didn't want to have people in the background. It needed to be a isolated scene between
Yeah.
Neil and Nikki,
Hmm.
and the whole idea was to do a guerrilla shoot initially over there. And my worry
Hmm.
was, what do I do with the people in the background? Because we don't want to add that ambient in the dialogue, even if it is picked up.
Hmm.
Of course, now that you've seen the film, you know ki a lot of it is also very smart dialogue editing, taking out what we don't want, only retaining what we need, filling up the gaps with or what you say, worldizing the ambience, making it feel like it belongs to the dialogue. Normally, you worldize dialogue to make it feel like it belongs to the environment. I think we did exactly the opposite. We worldized to the dialogue and made the world feel like it belonged to the space where the dialogue was being held at. You understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So
Uh,
that's what makes that film really very beautiful.
well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy at least one of you from this group has seen it, because usually what happens is, see, people
Hmm.
talk about, I mean, of course, the sound designer of my background, people end up talking about the bigger films. And I feel, but I've done so many other smaller, beautifully more challenging films that are well crafted. But people haven't seen them because it didn't have the marketing capacity or publicity capacity that a bigger film has. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So I think I'm pleasantly happy.
Yeah.
And I'm
So
very sure that when you see Godavari, you'll realize uh, we've taken where I was at in June to a completely radically different level in Godavari, because it's the most immersively sounding film I have done in recent times.
yes, so I'll watch it for sure once it will be on any OTT platform. I think it's not out.
No, it's
So
not
it's
out.
not
It's
out.
not out.
Yeah.
No, no.
Also, sir, are you also working on his upcoming project at Rao Sahib?
No, I'm not working on Nikhil's next project.
Okay, okay.
Another question is Foley editing part of dialogue editing in post? Okay, so I'm glad you've asked this question. So, what is Foley now? So for that we have to understand what is dialogue, effects, and Foley. Dialogue obviously is what is being spoken, the entire content that is being recorded on set. Sometimes this dialogue content might in betweens of dialogue, let's say a door open or closed footsteps or some action activity which constitutes effects, it might be picked up in the dialogue track, you know. So because of the advancement in which we are all working today, not just on technology front but also in terms of our deliverables. So the moment you work with a Netflix or an Amazon or a Hotstar, you're expected to deliver content in a particular manner. It's not just the mixes, because these mixes get dubbed in multiple different languages. When they get dubbed in different languages, they're only replacing the dialogue track, so they require require what is called a fully filled M&E stem, music and effects. So from the location track, if there are sounds that make its way to the effects domain, you know, it all gets separated and put down on what is called a production effect track. Apart from that, there is the effects. So the effects could be anything. It is not just limited to ambiances. Ambiances are not just limited to birds and crows and sparrows. It is traffic, it is marketplaces, it is environments, it could be wind, it could be room tones, it could be machinery. Anything that you hear as a noise is an ambience track. That is not limited to, let's say, a car being driven or a bike being ridden or a gunshot or a punch or a doorbell or a phone ring or a mobile message or anything. Any sound that you hear is an effects sound. Now then, what is Foley? Foley is actually all of the sounds that we make in real life, which cannot probably be done or created from a library, because uh, it is too time consuming. If you were to stitch, imagine every footstep, somebody walking. It's easier for somebody to look at the picture and perform that sound. So people walking, bangles, earrings, uh, body movement, cloth movement, a flag fluttering in the breeze, uh, any sound that is uh, humanly performable is classified as a Foley sound. Okay, it's a live effect that is being recreated by somebody looking at the screen and performing them in front of a mic. It's like dubbing the effect. You understand? So they're completely different departments. All three need to cohesively come together. So the production effect, the sound effects that you're adding, and this Foley all need to not just sync with the picture, but also when you play all these tracks, should it end up sounding like it is noise. Yeah.
Sir, how
And
do you
yeah,
sir, how do you do that, sir, for students, sir, beginners level, sir, to create something effective, sir, like a punch, sir, or door opening, sir? Uh, how can that be, sir, done more effectively, sir, using just the basic tools, sir, like door opening, or I just using, sir, like uh maybe a mic of this kind, sir, just on DSLR camera, sir, I have the only this only.
Got it.
Sir, how can we do, I can do it effectively, sir?
So basically, what are we doing based on when we talk about resources? What resources are available to you? Okay, it doesn't take expensively very costly equipment to record something. So if you want a door, what is the door? First of all, understand what is the nature of this door. It is the door of a cupboard, it is the door of a cabinet, it is the door of your bedroom, it is your main hall door, house door, hotel door. So understand what is the sound you want to record. Now, when you want to record something, what do you need? Something as simple as a Zoom recorder. Don't need a recorder that costs you 10 lakhs. You require, if you want to take a picture and you don't have an expensive camera, you have your phone, you can still take a picture, right? Is it what I want to now say to you is because you are a student and you don't have access to an ARRI camera, does that mean you cannot make something with your iPhone or your Android phone? You can still make something, right? Because you have a script. So write your script, then make the film. To make that, if you've got the simplest, most cheapest of equipment, you can still make it because it's still an idea, right? Can't stop you from making it. Otherwise, YouTube and the millions of videos would not have existed. Given this resource, record those 100 doors that you can find. Two ways to approach this. One is you have a friend who has volumes of libraries where doors from hundreds of recordings or thousands of recordings before are available to you. But at your level, maybe you don't have access to that. And for good reason, because you should know how to record a door. Now, that being said, I don't know how many terabytes of libraries, but when I approached Godavari in 2020, I approached it from a point of view of recording from scratch the entire sound palette of that film, just the ambience, because it somewhere I was inspired by choosing that approach. Let's say I wanted to see what it would feel like not to use a pre-existing library. And there was something unique about this location, which is the Ramkun Ghat in Nasik. And I would spend 6 hours, if not lesser, every day just rolling sound. I would hit the recorder and run it for hours and hours in different places on that ghat, which is probably around a kilometer radius. When I came back and handed over this sound material to my sound editor, I can assure you he was filled with joy because he had not gotten such a, I mean, we ended up with something like 60 GB, which is roughly maybe around 40 hours, 50 hours of recordings. And even now, when I think of the film, there's one specific recording that never made its way to the final edit, and I wish I had found a space for it. This is trivia, but it is the trivia that no, Rohit, it is the trivia that puts the experience into the project. And so this one sound has stayed with me. It was a group of women that had broken down and were crying. You know, when they cry, it was a howl. It was mercilessly painful to hear them because I started crying while recording. And all I was doing, and of course, see, when I'm recording these things, let me just also tell you, I have to be very, very careful not to invade people's spaces because I am gathering ambiences. So I cannot just take my mic and go and stand right in the middle of where they are. But I remember from where I was standing, and this particular recording was on a Zoom recorder. And it was very, very heart wrenching gut wrenching because of just, even as I'm talking to you, I can remember how they were crying, and that particular thing never made it to the film because it didn't belong to the film. Maybe, you know, sometimes audio doesn't make it because it doesn't belong there, but that I can assure you one day in my life will make it to a spot on a film because of just the nature of that recording. Zoom recorder, very simple recorder, nothing complicated. Other days I use a 744 sound devices with a MS microphone, which is a combination of a MKH30 and a 40. Again, very simple setup, nothing very expensive and costly. Of course, I had it available to me. I used it. Uh, Take that microphone that you have, even if it is on your camera, and I mean, how will you learn how to record unless you place a microphone and record something? Do 10 takes of it, come back to your computer, dump it, listen to it. Make sure it sounds good, make sure it's not distorted, make sure it's not clipping. Until you don't do those exercises to train yourself, you will not know correctly how to record. Take that recorder, you go to a cafe, you go to a main road, you go somewhere. While you're sitting there, just place the recorder. So what I would do is place the recorder and walk away from it. Of course, keeping my eye on it, but I would walk away like 300, 400 meters away because uh, my problem would personally is whenever I would wear the headphones and be there, somebody and they see a microphone, what happens? People come and stand there and say, "Kya kar raha hai?" And you pick that up. So I would leave it there and walk a good 300 meters away and sit somewhere else and let it record so that nobody would gather around the microphone, and I got clean recordings. Once in a way somebody would come and talk into the microphone or whatever, and that we can always delete. So I think the practice is whatever handy. There are times when I record on my phone. Yeah, I hear something good, and I just want a reference. It could be a street musician, and I record it and I keep it because what happens is in the mix of many sounds in a film, sometimes even a phone recording would work, you know. So if that becomes the practice, even on your student films, you will start to see that you have a huge palette of sounds available to you to put into the edit. Now, how do you create that balance between all these sounds and dialogue? That is mixing, and that, of course, it's like saying you can't be the world's best photographer, filmmaker, or painter on the very first day that you start to do something. So you're training yourself to be better, okay? And you, as a director, can't do everything. You can't write a script, direct the script, edit the script, shoot the script, do the sound for the same script. It's difficult, which is why film business has multiple people that you align with, you make friends with, you have common goals, you have common thoughts, and your ideas all are helping each other grow that film. So I hope that makes sense to you.
Sir, for the couple of short films, sir, I've made, sir, I found that, sir, besides the object's movement or sir hitting something or the recent short film that I made, which was about chopping wood, sir, I was easily able to dub the voice, sir. But sir, I just use this, sir, and attached to my phone and started the voice recorder, sir. So, sir, I really wanted to ask, sir, uh, how to accurately, sir, dub the walk, sir, the character walks and the sound stage that I recorded afterwards, sir.
Yeah, so that
So when the
actually, yeah, I got it.
character walks, sir, I didn't do that, sir. But then afterwards, I really had a problem, sir, because uh, how to do that, and it was released that a week before, sir. It had really rained, sir, and then everything had just become dry. And
Yeah,
so how
so
do
half of that challenge actually is you are dependent on the resource. So what happens is when we are doing a film and the film is whatever, again, remember, this is not, please don't keep this in your head, this applies to only big films, this is applying to small films also. So when that film comes to us, everything is shot as per the film requirement, in the rain, not in the rain, wet ground, not wet ground. So when I say resource and dependent on resource, when we do effects which are Foley oriented, so footsteps, somebody walking in water, wet soil, uh, it has to be done in this room, because you can't record this outside in the real world, because the real world has noise, right? So these are called Foley recording studios, and there we have what is called mud pits, okay, where you take off the top floor and it's like a, you know, 8 inch to 12 inches deep mud pit. We can fill water in that, we can fill mud in that, we can make the mud wet, and we can perform those footsteps to the screen. So I think that is what you are referring to, the ability to recreate those sounds in a quiet environment for it to match the tone of the film, so that when we add it back into the film, it feels like it was actually in the real world. So those unfortunately cannot be done in your backyard, because it might be noisy, and so it is difficult to get the same feel that you would had you recorded this in the Foley room, the Foley studio.
Sir, just for this, sir, for this DSLR microphone mic, sir,
Hmm.
can you, sir, really, sir, give some additional advice or how to use so that I can really get the maximum input from its use, sir? I mean, not.
I mean, the
So I just
first,
want, sir, your advice or something. Do I, sir, will I get a better quality by putting that artificial fur that comes, or sir, is this okay for use in outside or closed environments, sir?
correct. So the reason why you use the sponge on the mic to start with is to be able to cut down, uh, it doesn't cut down noise entirely, but it cuts down, let's say, the wind, for example. You know, depending on where you are, on some days, the nature could be that it's windy, some days it is extremely still. Uh, but when wind is far more higher is when you use the fur, which becomes a wind, it's called a wind jammer. That's why you use that. Now, to be able to answer your question, how do I record better? It's like saying, how do I become a MF Hussain? Or how do I become the most famous director, whatever he may be, his name to you? It's by practice. How much have you recorded till date with this particular mic, with your recording apparatus that you have, whether it is on your camera or otherwise? For which then we have to go one step backwards to say, how is the mic working? Do you understand how this mic is, what it's doing? How does it work? Have you set all the basic entry level settings correctly? You follow what I'm saying? By just plugging in the mic, it's like saying if I just took my camera and shot a picture, I won't get the best picture in the world. So I have to understand many things that work around the camera, whether it is to do with the aperture, the focal length, the lensing. Lensing means lighting, lighting means exposure. So there are many parameters that help determine what is the correct frame of visual I want to capture. Similarly with sound, I have to understand how a mic is working. How do I set the levels? How do I make sure I'm not recording too soft or too loud? How do I set that level? And it's very simple. You have to practice, you have to connect, you have to see. If it is a loud door bang, you have to drop the level down. If it is a soft whisper, you have to raise the level up. With each time you drop a level or raise a level, something is impacting your sound. And so where does my level have to be set? How does it have to be set so I can get the best possible recording for that particular sound in that particular location. There is no one answer I can give you that says this is the answer for a better recording. You have to have recorded it, bring it back, like I said, to your computer, listen to it, learn from the mistake, go back and record it again. It is not mandatory there has to be a mistake, and it is not mandatory there won't be a mistake. So that is what you're doing. You're teaching yourself how to record better.
Um, Sir, you earlier said that about Godavari, sir, that you used a Zoom recorder, sir. For sir, Zoom recorder, sir, we used, sir, an H4n, sir. We had some earlier class, sir.
Hmm.
So, uh, sir, for whole Godavari, did you just take that H4n and did you just place the level at the distance that you wanted to record and
Yes,
was that the only process, sir?
like I
For
said.
example, sir, when I saw in the trailer, sir, there was a scene in the river, sir, where they were just two characters talking in the boat, sir, in the middle of a river, Godavari River, sir. Uh, so for that, sir, there must be have been a mixing of Foley and dialogue editing in the post, sir.
Yes, it is. Yes. So first question I'll answer is, did I use only a Zoom recorder? Like I said, no. I used a Zoom recorder on some days, and I also had with me the sound devices 744T with a MS microphone, which is a combination of the Sennheiser MKH30 and the MKH40. I wanted to approach the recordings in a particular way. Again, more from a library creation point of view as opposed to thinking only about the film. Uh, there were some days when it didn't matter if I always had the Zoom recorder with me, which is why that got used. Because if I was walking somewhere and I heard something I wanted to pick up, I would just stop, sit down, put the recorder on, and let it roll for as long as it had to roll. There was no, most recordings are not 5 and 10 minutes long. Each recording would be sometimes 45 to 1.5 hour long. The recorders would just be rolling. I would never stop the recorder from rolling. Okay. Uh, in terms of the second question, which is completely different, the scene on the boat with the mother and son in the middle of the lake. Oh, yes, like I said, every project will dictate how you want to create the world around those characters. When we are shooting a film, the critical aim is to get the dialogue as clean as possible. We don't want the world around us. Literally, we would wish to have switched the world on mute so that the dialogues can be clean. Uh, that scene, if you understand the screenplay, when you see the film, you will understand that it is a point when uh, at this point Nishi has one sec. Nishi has told the family that he's dying. He's got a tumor and he's dying. And of course, what mother would not feel terrible about that news? So she comes to the temple, they pray, they're sitting on the boat, and she's saying, listen, I have a friend in America who can help and do XYZ treatment. Uh, the idea of that scene happening in the middle of the lake also is an isolation from the rest of the world. And so the ambience, the water lapping against the boat, the little creak of the boat in the water as it moves, these are all things that are added separately in post. uh, you are hoping, like I said, to pick up as much of that dialogue as clean as possible. So a
So
lot of it.
now I think, Baylon, it's 12:30. We are done for today, and still student have the time questions. You can please write down your questions and shoot here in the box rather than talking here, because as I said earlier, it will be more precise in terms of your thought process. So do write down all your questions, whatever you want to ask, and we will take it up for tomorrow also, because that is another day we have.
Lovely.
So yeah, so Baylon, thank you so much for your time and advice and sharing the experience.